Live from our headquarters in Lagos, Nigeria, we begin TVC News at 10 with this breaking news from the nation's capital, where President Bola Tinubu has suspended the central bank governor, Godwin Emefiele, from office with immediate effect. In a statement by Director Information Willie Bassi on behalf of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, this is sequel to the ongoing investigation of his office and the planned reforms in the financial sector of the economy. Mr. Emefiele has been directed to immediately hand over the affairs of his office to the Deputy Governor, who will act as the central bank governor pending the conclusion of investigation and the reforms. Well, joining me live in the studio is business editor Tolulokpe Ogunjobi at State House correspondent Femi Akonde would be joining us live from the nation's capital, Abuja. Tolu, it's good to have you here this evening. You've been covering this beat for over a decade now, and Emefiele's suspension is at this time premised on ongoing investigation of his office and the reforms. But what really are the contending issues around these reforms?
Well, first is that President Tinubu was clear in his inauguration speech that he was going to sanitize the monetary aspect of that. That's the monetary side. You know, we have the monetary and the fiscal side of his administration, and that's the central bank monetary policy, controlling inflation, trying to manage the currency and all of that. And you will agree with me that one of the major issues we've faced in recent times is the forex, hike in forex, the disparity between the I and E window and the other market, which is the parallel market. For more than 3, 4, 5 years, we've been on the rate I and E window between 400 and 450 naira, and on the other side is around 700 naira, 750 naira. At the time, it got about 900 naira, if you could remember, and it came down. The same CBN governor instituted that initiative to stop the BDCs from getting forex from the CBN to try to address all of these issues. So many people have to go out of their way to get FX. Airlines cannot repatriate funds because of FX issues, and this has really not worked with all of the things that the CBN has tried to institute to address all of this. So I think that is part of the reasons why they said there's supposed to be a reorganization of Nigeria's monetary policy. And of course, when you talk about the ratio of the monetary policy rate at the moment, the central bank has continued to increase this rate. The aim is to rein in on inflation, but it has not worked. As of today, inflation is 22.22%, and our rate is still around 18.5%. So we cannot, and this will increase lending rates. How will businesses survive when you've projected before now, and at the end of the day, after a meeting, you see a change? That means your bank will write you and tell you, the rate has changed, and of course, there'll be more money for you to pay. So this has affected businesses, affected investors' confidence. And when investors are not sure about how they can repatriate their funds, they won't bring foreign direct investment into your country. There is no how you try to convince them. So you see, these are the issues that have affected the central bank. The governor is always maintaining that he does some unorthodox policies, going away from the norm, trying to do things that are away from the norm. But it seems not to be working. So there are a lot of other things that should have been done that he didn't do. We've had analysts talking all around this. Before we even go to the big Naira redesign thing that happened before the election, you know what happened? For months, some people didn't have 1,000 Naira notes in their wallets, 500 Naira notes. There were no notes anywhere. Even as of today, do we have the new notes?
Well, so let's take a pause and listen to the CBN governor sometime in January announce an extension of a deadline of
the Naira redesign policy.
Yes, the redesign policy. Let's listen to that now.
On the foregoing,
well, we'll get back to this video of the CBN governor, but Tolu, you would have to still hold on. Let's connect to Femi Akonde, our State House correspondent, who is in Abuja. Femi, you are in Abuja. Talk to us about this news coming from the presidency about suspension of Mr. Godwin Emefiele. All right, we will also connect with Kemi, but then we have an economist, Okwemi Agbade, joining us also online. Mr. Agbade, what do you make of this move coming at this time, suspension of the CBN governor? It's quite a busy evening, and getting all the views together, everything coming together. Tolu, you were talking about the Naira redesign policy. This is major,
I must tell you.
I'm curious, and I'm actually tempted to ask you whether you have the new notes.
I tell you, I don't have the new notes. And even when you use the ATM, which I did earlier today, to withdraw 20,000, which is the limit, it was all old notes. Even when you go into the banking hall to withdraw, you get the old notes. So what really was behind the Naira redesign policy? I'm not a politician, I'm a journalist. But it seems like there's more to it. So there are a lot of questions to be answered around the Naira redesign policy. Why did we have to do it at that time? The pain, people lost lives. We lost people, a lot of people, even in the rural and urban areas, because people could not get monies. People could not do transfers. The banks were not prepared. They couldn't handle the volume of transaction at that time.
And to think that people had these monies in their account, but they just could not access the funds.
You can't access your funds. You can't even buy what you want to buy with your own funds. And even legally, it's wrong for me to put my money in the bank, and when I want my money, I can't get my money. There's also the e-Naira policy. There's a lot. E-Naira policy was to try to address the issue of cryptocurrencies and all of that in all of these digital currencies. But it didn't go anywhere. How many people subscribed to the e-Naira policy? How many people are using the wallet as of today? Can we just try and investigate and get how many people? So most of these policies affected Nigerians, and they really complained about it. They came out to say, no, that's not the way to go. We expect that by December, according to the law, we should go to the new notes, go solely integrate to the new notes. But we don't even have it. We don't know if they're printed. How much was printed? How much did we get into circulation? How much was withdrawn from circulation? Monetary policy has a lot to do with all that has to do with the economy. Businesses, capital markets, stock markets, they look at what comes from the CBN. That shapes their investment. That shapes their decision. That's what will make them say, I want to come to Nigeria. But when you're not clear, when your policies are not clear, investors sit on the fence.
So you think investors' confidence actually dwindled
of course,
as a result of that?
Of course. Our capital inflow dropped. Even in the market, domestic investors are taking charge of the Nigerian capital market as of today. The foreign investors are nowhere to be found. Just a few of them who still believe slightly in Nigeria or know how they can repatriate their funds by themselves. We have some guys they're coming with the hot money. They come to invest. All of this disparity between the I and E window and the other markets has discouraged this.
All right, Tolu, let's bring in Okwemi Agbaje, who joins us now. Mr. Agbaje, what is the reaction to the suspension of the CBN governor? Did you see this coming?
I don't think the suspension was completely unexpected. I think I've been hearing your other panelists talking about the CBN Naira redesign fiasco, but that was merely the final nail, I think, in the coffin of the now suspended CBN governor. You recall that we've had many unprecedented things. This was the CBN governor who collected the nomination form to run for presidency as a member of the ruling APC while sitting in the central bank. That was morally wrong. It was possibly legally wrong as well, given the legal specifications about the autonomy of the CBN and its non-participation in politics. You recall that we've had a very underwhelming economic performance over the period of the governor's time in office. We have the issue of the 23 trillion Naira Ways and Means, which is an obvious illegality given the prescriptions in the CBN Act and other laws about the management of ways and means. So I think that there were many reasons for which it was expected that President Tinubu would take action, and he hinted at it in his inaugural address. He spoke about house cleaning, thorough house cleaning at the central bank. I think watchers of the Nigerian economy, including international partners and trading partners and international financial institutions, would be probably be relieved that some action is being taken around the central bank.
Well, Mr. Agbaje, where do you see this investigation lead us?
Sorry, I didn't get that.
Where do you see this ongoing investigation and the reforms in the financial sector lead Nigeria?
Well, I think that my expectation would be that the new president would like to start with a new slate at the central bank. I suspect that that is in the interest of the Nigerian economy and confidence of the of market watchers, domestic and international. I think also that all of those issues that I mentioned, you would need some reckoning on them. What was the motivation for the Naira redesign? How much was spent on it? What's the status of that? The ways and means issue, what is the motivation for that? Like I said, some of these things involve elements of illegality. And then, but most importantly, the policy posture, the policy stance of the central bank, the lack of transparency around FX allocations and who benefits and who doesn't benefit, and all of those. So I see sooner than later a new governor at the central bank, a new, more market-friendly, more rational market direction from the central bank. And I suspect that all of those, if they do happen, will be positive for the Nigerian economy.
Well, as it is, the CBN, now suspended CBN governor has been asked to hand over to his deputy governor, who is expected to act as the central bank governor pending the conclusion of investigation and the reforms. How cooperative do you see other members of the team who are working, in the CBN in all of this?
Well, I'm sure that nobody wants to go out of the central bank if it appears that the suspended governor is on his way out. I suspect that many of the people left will fall into line. But I think that what the new president should do is an unbiased investigation. And if there are any other members of the team who may be implicated in some of these events, then like what President Bola Tinubu said was that he wanted to do a thorough house cleaning. And it is possible that a thorough house cleaning may go beyond the governor. It is possible that it is restricted to a few people, but let the facts and the investigation lead us, rather than us analysts and observers making presumptuous statements. So I think the right thing has been done. You suspend the gentleman on the seat, you carry out a proper investigation. But with regard to the suspended governor, I suspect that the space for maneuver is limited. But we are not in a position to speak with definitiveness about the other members of the team.
Indeed, Nigerians and friends of the country are looking out for what becomes of this investigation, as you have said, thorough house cleaning. And people would really like to see how thorough the cleaning is. Mr. Agbaje.
Well, to be frank, I think President Tinubu has, personally, I have a lot of high expectations for Nigeria's presidency, especially in terms of economic policy. I think President Tinubu in 10 days has exceeded my expectations. I'm very proud and happy to say that. And I suspect that this will be no different. I think the investigation should be thorough. I think the facts should be unearthed. There should be accountability. So this is not just a case of you just go home and sin no more. There should be accountability where there are established infractions. And then we should be able to restore the credibility, the institutional credibility of our central bank, which has been significantly damaged, in my opinion, especially with the Naira redesign. But that was just, like I said earlier, the final straw. We've had bans and we've had all sorts of policies that we have come to describe as unconventional. And we were beginning to normalize, I think, deviancy at the central bank, which is a tragedy for a country that seeks development. So I'm hopeful, and I urge most Nigerians to be hopeful as well.
All right, let's get back to that issue of Naira redesign policy. Just like our business editor Tolulope Ogunjobi mentioned earlier, it had huge impacts on the economy. Market men and women, corporate workers, I mean, everyone just really had some level of complaints. But then it was being justified on the fact that it was to curb corruption and it was to tackle insecurity. The fact that kidnappers would no longer be able to request huge sums because those sums were no longer with people. At the inception of that policy, what was your reaction? What was your understanding of the issue back then?
In fact, I like the question that you just had. Immediately the policy was released, I released a presentation. I looked at all the plausible justifications for the policy. And this is a public document that some people will probably have over the internet. And I came to the conclusion that you could not justify the policy on economic or macroeconomic policy and all of those. I could only suggest anti-corruption, security, and political motives that could form the basis of the policy. But even if you could justify them on those, even if you saw those three motives, it was clear, even at that time, relative to the experiences in other economies, that it would be impossible to accomplish the currency redesign for a country the size and limited banking penetration of Nigeria. It was clear, even from day one, that it was going to be impossible to accomplish a transfer of currency, change of the design of currency, exchange of notes across Nigeria within the time frame that the governor was proposing. That policy, in my view, was not just misguided, but it descended into the level of being a wicked assault on the finances, on the psyche, on the economy of our people. Our people suffered. Middle class people suffered. I suffered. We all suffered. It was inexplicable that in the 21st century, a central bank in a country the size and sophistication of Nigeria would treat Nigerians with that level of arrogance and ignorance because they were completely unfounded in their policy position. So it's now, today, it's an unmitigated tragedy. Why? We had endured all that suffering. We don't see the notes. It seems they've disappeared. It seems that even the political objectives that probably informed the policy failed. We've seen no benefit from the policy in terms of security or anti-corruption. There's been absolutely zero benefit to the Nigerian economy and to the Nigerian people from that policy. On the other hand, there was serious pain. It threatened even our elections and the stability of our country. So for me, that was merely the final nail in the coffin of an errant, I'm sorry to say, central banking institution. I believe that we have not fully recovered from that. Even now, confidence in the banking sector, confidence in the credibility and the integrity of the central bank, all of those things, our national economic confidence have all suffered. I'm sure that with this move, many people, observers, will be satisfied that perhaps policy is returning to rationality, to sensible underpinnings in the Nigerian economy. And that's a great thing. And I wait to see what will happen after the investigation. If, for instance, we're going to have a new central bank governor, it had better be a professional who is calm, who understands economics, who is disciplined, and who does not make some of those blunders that we've seen in the last few years.
All right, we know many have said that by the time we're going to have a new central bank governor, it shouldn't be a bank MD. It should rather be an economist, someone who understands how these things are actually done. But then finally, before we let you go, in the thick of the Naira redesign policy, many wondered the level of authority and audacity with which the central bank governor operated. Would it be correct to say he enjoyed the support of President Buhari back then?
That's the elephant in the room. Obviously, he did. It remains to be seen who was leading who. Was he leading the president, or was the president directing him? But it is clear that they were united on the central Naira redesign issue. They were united on the FX mismanagement policy. They were united on the bans of several items. They were united on the big issues. However, whether President Buhari's unity with Mr. Emefiele was informed by a correct understanding of policy is a separate question. But
All right.
the technical person, the technocrat who our laws gave autonomy on monetary policy, was the central bank governor. And therefore, he's the one that we will hold responsible, at least for failed policy. We can hold President Buhari responsible for failed leadership, where there are instances of that. But in this case, I think the technocrat, the banker, the person who was presumed to understand economics, the person who was supposed to run corporate governance in the central bank, the person who was supposed to offer calm, matured policy leadership in our economy was the suspended governor.
All right.
I think many will say about time.
Mr. Agbaje, we need to end the conversation here. Strategist, Business Advisory, Okpayemi Agbaje, thank you for talking to us on TVC News at 10.
Thank you.